Welcome to the Rock Your Dream Body and Dream Life interview series. Today I am here with Heather Dubé. So to tell you a little bit about Heather, she is a diagnostic and functional nutritionist and co-founder of E3 Energy Evolved, a thyroid, adrenal, and metabolic restoration system helping women and men create their lifetime best natural wellness and metabolism. Heather discovered this system with her co-founder and husband, Damien, during her own battle to successfully beat advanced Hashimoto's thyroiditis, chronic fatigue syndrome, and autoimmune disease drug-free through nutrition and lifestyle changes, and transformed her body to compete naturally as a U.S. national level figure athlete in 2 years. Wow. Welcome, Heather.
Yay. All right, let's get to the content. Enough about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's exactly why I wanted to have you as a part of this interview series, because I think your story is so amazing and so inspiring of like what the human body is really capable of. So let's start there. Let's talk about your journey to really rocking your dream body and your dream life.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you're doing this, and I love the collective that you have for this particular event. So, philosophically, my background began in psychology, actually, and I know that's a deep connection for us. And I really believe that everything we create as empowered creators in our lives begins and ends with our thoughts and what we believe is possible and what we expect is possible. I love that word. Because it opens the door for manifesting energetically what we call into our lives. And so for me, I studied psychology, and, Damien, my husband, and I had a long history in fitness competition and kind of been really comfortable in the space of how do you transform your body metabolically from a resting metabolism perspective. But a number of stressful events came up in our life, like a lot of people go through, and kind of our early 30s, about 6 months after our wedding, it was just like one thing after the other. And sometimes that's the way it always happens. It's never like one thing. It's just like when it rains, it pours. And it was, these series of stressful events, a tax audit. It was very unfortunate. Like right after our wedding, we learned my father-in-law was going to fall to cancer, stage 4, really quickly. I was going through a corporate buyout and a really intense marketing program manager job. And it was just kind of boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden my body started speaking to me in a very different way. And a way that, I'd always been really comfortable in my body being an athlete and really had a deep mind-body intuition and felt like competent in that area and controlling in that area, right? Like I thought I had it all buttoned up, and all of a sudden that relationship I have with my body started to get really chaotic. And it ended up being a really great blessing, because falling to thyroid and autoimmune disease and chronic fatigue syndrome really made me have to stop and listen at a much deeper level about what our bodies have to teach us. And that there was actually this other level of experiencing my health physically and spiritually that was much more elevated and awakened than what I thought I, knew at that point. So what was a really challenging time became what we call like the doorway, right? To step into. Am I going to take this instead on? Am I going to, try to tune it out and not listen and just, do what I want to do? Or I'm going to really listen to what my body has to say at a deeper level and use it as a learning lesson. And it became, a big, like a decade of work, but it really has transformed our lives and in the entire, direction and trajectory of our lives to what we do today. And so it's been pretty awesome. So.
Yes. And that is really like such a great example of how, we tend to think stress is just a normal part of life, and it is, but a lot of times we ignore it to this extent where it just keeps getting louder and louder and louder until we have no other choice but to pay attention. And for some people, that's a heart attack. For others, it's a situation like you. A lot of people, it starts with hormones, digestion, thyroid. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about not only like your journey has been amazing, but also this is something that you see often within your clients as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you're bringing up something very important. So in the space that we work, which is really the intimate connection between thyroid, fatigue-related disorders, which connect into the gut disorders, which a lot of times people aren't recognizing, because the gut is really the beginning and the end. So there's always something going on there, whether it's being called out by their practitioner or not. And then that connection to our resting metabolism. So, and not in a sense of saying, oh, I want to look a certain way, but understanding that actually this lesson that we had from my experience was, sports nutrition, fitness nutrition, working out is all great and important, but actually the bigger lesson, like what you just hit on, is stress. We're seeing this kind of movement in the industry now where people are starting to recognize this. And what people don't understand is that fitness and nutrition are applied sciences that are a form of stress to the body. We can use them in a way that we stress the body for good. But when you are in a fatigue-related state, those stressors now move from good to bad in a certain way. So we have to know where we are in an individualized way, in a holistic way. And if we are struggling with fatigue and energy, adrenal dysfunction, or have any indicators that there's thyroid or adrenal and autoimmune issues going on, at that point, if you're using certain forms of fitness, your body, and certain forms of nutrition program design, like dieting, caloric limitation, your body will start to get agitated at you for applying those, because you're pulling out of the metabolic bank that it needs to focus on healing internally those issues and really conserving as much energy as possible in when you look at energy arts and metabolic arts to keep you well and safe. And so this is where we see a lot of people, because the clients come in, they're like, oh, I don't understand. Like, all the things I used to do, how come they're no longer working? Like, I'm eating well, I'm eating healthy, like I'm working out, why is my weight flatlined? Or worse, why is my body backlashing at me and actually putting on weight when I'm doing all the things that used to work, where I would think would be nurturing wellness, right? So that's an indicator, typically like a red flag of your body speaking to you and saying, something's not, right internally. And so we really have to get more, individualize that point and understanding what sciences and what applied stressors are good and bad, when are they good and bad, and how do I look at the picture of my stress holistically to reverse those things, get back to a place of good so that I can go back to, the fitness that I love or drives me. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Yes. Everything you're saying is so great, because I think, number one, we talked about this a little before we started, but like the core people who are watching this are corporate women who are pushing really hard in their careers, women who are managing the household and kids and putting everyone else in front of themselves. And a lot of times they're pushing so hard. There's like all of this stuff that's going on inside that, like, when I talk about stress, I think sometimes people think, yeah, okay, that's nice, reduce stress, okay, woo-woo, whatever. But no, what you're saying is from a very science-based approach. These things are affecting your body and its ability to function optimally. And when your body's not working like it's made to, of course it's going to hang on to everything. Of course it's not going to be lean and feeling good and having energy, because it's taxed at so many levels.
Yeah, and that was like this enlightenment in this, that was in this space, is I want people to understand in our exchange today, like the point that I got sick in my early 30s, from the time I was 8, I was doing athletics. Like I didn't know ever what it was like to fall in the body. I needed to fall in my body to have that empathy, right? To feel completely out of control. Because from the time I was 8 to the time I was like 32, I mean, like you've seen some of my competition shots. Like I'm a high level athlete to the national level, and like I know how to change the human body. I'm very confident in that area from a metabolic perspective, from the outside of what it looked like, right? And I thought I was doing that in a way that was healthy on the inside, but the lesson there is we are not necessarily well inside, even if we're fit outside. And when we can come back from a place of making ourselves well internally first and work our way to the outside of the body from the inside, your body will make the results like 200 times better, but more importantly, because you're honoring its truth, which is one, it wants to be healthy and it wants to keep you safe and alive. It prioritizes wellness over what a number on the scale is, or what you look like, or how your clothes fit. I hate to say it. And what was fascinating for me is when I decided at 32, like, okay, I know a lot. I'm really competent in this area of weight loss, but something is obviously wrong that I've fallen this far, that I can't get off the couch at 3, that my hair is falling out in clumps, that my skin has eczema all over it, and doctors can't tell me what the hell is going on. Sorry, I dropped a bomb, but it was a really, like, it's a decade ago now, but I will never forget what that felt like, to literally feel like I was falling in this dissension in my body towards almost like the end of life, where my body couldn't function. I literally, I left my job. I mean, I had a very successful marketing job as a manager. And I was like, I had to recognize that even though the doctors were like so unclear about what was going on and I wasn't getting leadership, that I knew enough from what I'd done for 30 years that the way my body was talking back to me, that every form of stress at that point in my life, mental stress, emotional stress, I'm going to call these out because people, like you're saying, they're not tapping into all the forms of stress. They're like stress management. They're like compartmentalizing it in a box. It's bigger than that. Your mental stress, your emotional stress, the mental stress even is like how you see things, your perspective, how you call stress into your life, in your mindset, through your relationships, your environmental stress. So not just your physical stress. What we're saying when we talk about, E3 Energy Evolved, essentially our brand, we're talking about multiple levels of energy management related to metabolic stress. So your energy in, your energy out, your energy environment. If you want to get a better experience of the body where you can thrive, you need to think 50,000 feet, holistic, all forms of stress. What's going on in my life that I can, what can I temporarily lessen? So that my body can have a better experience. And usually there's like a lot of ways we're actually calling stress into our lives that we're not yet recognizing, and having to battle with chronic fatigue syndrome and win that battle naturally, which a lot of doctors will still tell you is not even possible to do. They'll just stick you on a thyroid medication,
Right,
you on your head and say, have a nice day. And if you first call me and I'll just up your dose. Like I was like not going down that road. I was adamant about that. I'm like, I'm not using thyroid medication. I know that my body can come above this naturally, and I know there's a way to figure it out. And I was just relentless that I was going to find out how to do it, and it can do it. That's what we want people to know. Is like, if you choose to take thyroid medication, then that's your choice, because this is your body, and how you experience it is your choice, and we honor that. But people should know that like they have an option and they have an alternative. It's just being willing to go down that path and make those changes so that your body can be freed up to change for you and thrive again.
Yes. And my story is very similar, where I went to a doctor and, had many times where they did tests and said, well, it's your thyroid, you need to be on thyroid medication the rest of your life. And, I actually had a nutritionist tell me that I had Hashimoto's disease as well. And I was like, no, and not going, I felt like the list of pills just kept getting longer and longer. And a lot of times I think that's what happens for women, especially, is when they go to the doctor and they have tests done. Like the option usually is thyroid medication, anxiety medication, or some sort of Band-Aid. And so I think what you're saying is look deeper and be more active in this conversation about your own health and what's really going on, so you can get to that root thing that's causing everything else up the chain to be out of alignment.
Yeah. And I think it starts with, like we were talking about before, first you have to believe it's possible. Because if you're not going to believe it's possible for your body to be powerful enough to heal itself naturally, then whatever you believe, you're going to manifest. So first you have to believe that it's possible, that your body has this inherent inner doctor, that it wants to be well for you, that's actually its truth. Like your body, we talk about this too, because there's a lot of spiritual connection, I believe, in physical wellness. And that's, part of what we teach is like, if you're going to thrive spiritually here in your journey, you have to be physically well. It is not possible to be physical broken. And what physically broken looks like means like having an illness, a sickness, let's call it what it is, because like it's changing so much now. It scares me. I know you and I talk about this, because our expectation of the new human body normal is to live sick and on medications. Now it's like everyone thinks that, you talk to anyone and it's like every second conversation I get in, oh, I have thyroid disease. Oh, I'm on a thyroid
adrenal fatigue, burnout.
Oh my God. Like, but that is not what scares me as much is the lack of reaction after the words come out of my mouth. That I'm like, because when I was like, falling to this, I didn't even know that's what I had initially. Cause like you, I mean, I was going to doctors, they're like, oh, reading the thyroid labs. First it was like, you just have allergies. And meanwhile, my face is all swollen shut. Like, I mean, I look like a monster in their office and I'm like, how come no one else here looks like me? Like, this is not, and they were just like, oh, now this is what you have. Just take the allergy shots, and I just kept getting worse and worse because they don't listen. They don't listen to the body. It's a very different, allopathic medicine is a very different philosophy. But anyway, same thing, went through the labs. And that's an area where really, I know, we're really passionate about and talk and educate about, because it's an area where people fall a lot of pitfalls in the wrong recommendations that are very costly in terms of money and time to get taken down labs that are not effective in the data that they need. Or what we say is they're over-tested and under-resulted. There's like people that we intake that have literally have a folder of like labs, and I'm just like, it's heartbreaking because I have to say, we're going to start over. Yeah. And that's a conversation to have. But point being, like with all of this, I think it's just this kind of spinning that people get caught in. And it's frustrating to see when there is so much we can do that people are not being presented with in the medical community. For us, it was that, again, we were blessed to be able to work with some pretty prominent, athletic coaches who are nutritionists and very skilled in that area. And for me, it was just like this, my passion in psychology, I was kind of had this knowing of like, there's more. Like there's more here that is not like the whole time, like alarm bells are going off for me. Cause I'm like, I knew that nutrition, what for the first 30 years of my life had always powerfully changed my body. I knew that nutrients was always the foundation. Whenever I went on a program that was going to change my body from point A to point B, yes, like movement was in that picture. Yes, sleep, rest, hydration. But nutrition was like 80 to 90% of the driver of human body change. So for me, the whole time I'm going, okay, I'm sick. I may not be trying to shift my body composition in an advanced way, but I do want to take my body from point A to point B right now. I don't want to be in this hole anymore. I want to go from like pitfall to thriving. And why is nobody suggesting nutrition? Like, why is it like, you go to the doctor and they're just like, oh, just take this medication. I'm like, no, it's got to be that. And there's more to it, right? But that's why like the focus, what we talk about today is like, if you really want to reverse your thyroid and autoimmune and fatigue condition, you have to be looking at these 5 core areas of metabolic function. And you really, ultimately, if you want to move the body quickly, you got to do it at the same time. So you're really giving your body all the firepower that it needs to produce change. So that's essentially, nutrients, which I look at as food and supplements, movement, stress, and detoxification. And all those things sync up together when we're doing a program for someone and we're using labs to assess them. We're looking at and programming in all those areas so we can move the body quickly, because it really needs all of that firepower to create change. And it's frustrating because you see people, I'm sure you get in these conversations all the time, you see people and they're like, I'm doing the right things. And like, really what's happening is they're getting stuck with leadership that's kind of only giving them like 10% of what they need to move, their functional wellness and the metabolic needle forward.
Yeah. They're sort of focusing on this top level surface stuff when really you have to target a lot of that stuff that's going on underneath the surface. So with your clients, or if someone is in this position where they're like, yes, this is me, this is how I'm feeling, what do you suggest as the first steps for them to start really getting this taken care of and getting themselves on the right track?
Oh my God, super passionate about this talk. Okay. I'm like doing the happy dance so often. Okay, yes. So the answer is strategy, right? We are like so big about results driven. If you are results driven, this is again why I was like thinking this way, and why when I was going through this, and I'm like, you start with the thing that's going to get you the most change first. Wouldn't that make sense? Right? So like the thing that you have to confront, we can start and end the conversation now. If you are not going to confront your food, you are not going to change your outcomes. Period. End of story. Doesn't mean if you're trying to change your body composition, your resting metabolism, rebalance your body, restore your body, heal your thyroid disease. All of those conversations fall to nutrients. Period. End of story. And if you're going to change the body powerfully and go after what I call greatness in anything, and greatness, a form of greatness, is living disease-free. I am disease-free. I have no thyroid disease. I have no autoimmune disease. I have no chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. I don't get, like, this was one of the things, I know I've told you this story too, is like, everything heals. That's what's so cool, is when you come at the body the right way, the truth of the body is it can heal. It will heal everything in the priority order that it wants to, but it will heal everything. So now, like I was just telling you, we just moved, and it was so cool to be like, just gut my bathroom. And I was like, I don't need yeast infection cream anymore. Sorry, just being totally honest. Like, I don't need Advil anymore. I don't need Excedrin anymore. I don't need, I used to get cold sores chronically for 30 years. I don't need that stupid stuff I used to put on my lip anymore. Like, I hucked it all out, and I was like, this is awesome. That's what you get for changing your food. When changing your food, I mean powerfully changing your food. So to get a picture of that, you have to understand also what's in our kitchen cupboards today. And what that looks like is our food, when you open our fridge, there's a lot of green staring back at you. There's a lot of green colors, and there's protein, and there's healthy fats on our counter. There's nuts and seeds in our cupboards, our crackers that are made of nuts and seeds. There's a ton of shelving of nice high density clinical grade nutraceuticals. So this is powerful, empowering nutrition that says, hell no, FDA and pharmaceutical companies, I'm not going to be your profit center. I'm going to take my power back physically and spiritually. And the amazing thing that we found is that when you put your healing first and say, I'm going to give potent quality nutrients to my body, guess what? Your resting metabolism just goes and calms way down. And all of a sudden, managing your weight becomes really easy, because all we really need is movement. We don't need abuse or abusive movement to create, force weight loss or fat loss. We need movement when we prioritize nutrients. So going back to your original question, the answer is be strategic in the actions that you take. This is what a competitive athlete always does. When we sit down and say, all right, I'm going to be in a goal to be in this competition at nationals in a year and a half or 2 years of work, I'm going to program what I'm going to do from today until that day. I'm going to start with what's going to get me 80% of the results first. Yeah. So that you lead with what is going to get you the most results. And then you round that out with, okay, if you're ready to confront your food, now let's talk about, what am I doing in my fitness? What does my job look like? And how much stress is in my life? My relations and my environment, like, how do I perceive and react to stress? Because actually research shows that stress actually isn't as bad as how we perceive it, right? So it's more how our perspective that actually affects our body from the brain to the gut, and how we perceive and react to something than actually the stressor itself. And you could then you get into all those nuances like detoxification, but we're just, us, like me and Damien are really honest, authentic people. I'm going to tell it to you straight. And the straight answer is, if you're not going to confront your food, then don't get crazy about all the other things, because ultimately your body's not going to be able to achieve that result for you. It really begins and ends with a powerful nutrition program.
I absolutely agree. I think that's one of the easiest ways. So I kind of envision that I have this tool belt of different options that I have for people depending on where they're at and what their particular goals are. And one of the areas that is very easy for us to plug in and make some changes that will create results is by really flooding their body with nutrients. Because when your body has the nutrients in a very bioavailable form, then
flood behind me. I'm like pointing to the flood.
Yes. Isn't it?
Sheila hit on an important word. Flood.
Yeah.
Flood the body with nutrients. Oh.
And the reality is you just can't, most people are not going to eat enough of this wide variety of foods on a daily basis in order to just get that from salads and salmon and stuff. So you do need to, in most circumstances, especially when you're trying to reboot your system, plug in some sort of supplementation. It's not bad to do that.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to me, the psychology that we have more fear about taking a potent supplement that has literally no risk. If you get in the right, like if you're getting, now, I mean, that's a whole other conversation we don't have time for today, but like the production of food and, where it comes from and how it's nurtured and if the soil's depleted or not and all these things it goes right into the same conversation of nutraceuticals because there is getting consumer-based nutraceuticals is not the same as getting clinical-grade nutraceuticals, where you're getting into the more controls, the more controlled your outcomes. And so we were saying in athletics, it's like what's measured is managed. And so in science, like if we're trying to produce a fast result in the body of change, we have to control as much in the program as possible. And so you do have to be aware, and most consumers do not have the skill sets a professional will. If you're working with a professional that can guide you on those choices more effectively, and you shouldn't try, because to me, it's just a waste of time. Like most of the people we know in this space, like people that have been doing this and living this stuff for a lifetime to, stay on top of it. And it's constantly changing. So you want to work with a professional that's on top of that pulse. But I love that you said the word flood. Can we just get that like flashing of flood the body with nutrients? Because that's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
It's people don't understand that is that, and so I want to share something on that. Cause like when we program for a client, so here's another thing. Cause like we take this philosophy from athletics. We don't program linearly. That's another strategy. So what I mean is like, you're hitting on so many important things. So flood the body, start with nutrients, and you hit on a second important thing, individualize. There is no one size fits all answer. Sorry, folks, your body started and ends in a different place than my body starts and ends. And even though we may have a thyroid disease, or I have a thyroid disease and you have one now and that kind of thing, the solution to getting out of your situation is going to look slightly different or maybe vastly different than mine did. I don't know. But until we use science and ask the body to get that clarity, like your answers are in here. They're in here. They're in your energy. They're in your chakras. They're in your gut. They're in your brain. They're in your heart, your soul. Like they're in you. And so we use science to honor nature is the ultimate truth and can change the body. And we direct nature in an individualized way using science, but science never trumps nature. But like individualization is key because you're not. So what that requires is that you take the time and create the space in your life to work with a guide, that may be the truth. Like you may get to a point where you can self-advocate and create change, but some people, the truth is you're always going to have to at some point look for leadership that is change-based, success-based, has results to show you that they can, have done this with other people, they can do it with you. Like some people are going to have to come to that point. I mean, like for me, just to illustrate that, like in my early 30s when I got sick, like I said, I had a lot of credentials and education in fitness and nutrition around body composition, but I still had to decide to go back to school to study functional nutrition, to figure my own health out and become a professional to do it. I think people get caught in that area. I'm sure you see that where they're like, oh, what's the one or two things I can do? But at some point you may have to consider leadership. You know what I mean? You may have to, not all.
And investing in your health in that way. I think a lot of times, like I'll hear people say, well, I'm just going to go and get something from GNC or Costco or whatever. And what they don't realize is that like not all supplementation is the same, and you want to choose really high quality forms so that your body and your cells can receive those nutrients. Because if it's not in a form that your body can take in effectively, you'll just pee it out. So you're essentially wasting your money because you're not willing to invest in the high quality versions of those things that will make a difference.
That's right. It's so true. I think, gosh, there's so many things I want to say there. Just, we have to be willing to invest in ourselves. Like that's a whole other conversation too. For me, there was no question. I do think at the time I got sick, it was a blessing that I'd had some history prior doing work with like Olympic and pro coaches, because that's an investment, when you're working with a coach, because I know you worked with a coach, right? Like that's an investment, not only in you producing results, an investment in your education. It's an investment in your growing your scope of work, your abilities, your understanding nutrition, all those things, and in your own experience of yourself. And so there were many things we'd done to that point where it was like, there just that caused the alarm bells to be going off, where I had enough capabilities in nutrition to be like, thanks very much, doctors, but what you're saying to me is not resonating at all. And I'm kind of like, sorry, I know you have 12 years of education, but like, I don't agree like at all with what you're saying. It's not aligning for me. I know what my body's saying to me. I know what it's capable of. I know what I've done in it before. So I believe what it can do now. I just think that, the path that you're giving me isn't going to get me there. And I'm going to go out and find and create my own path. And so I think we have to be that person. Like I call it a seeker. Like it's somebody that's a truth seeker. It's somebody that's like, I know there's something else out there that I believe that someone hasn't shown me, but it exists. And if you're hearing me now, I want you to hear me. I'm calling a direct relationship to, if I can go there, God, spirit, whatever you believe, universe. Like we don't see every day that it all exists. We don't see the planets floating around, right? But we're called to believe that that's there, right? We're called, and it's the same thing. Illness is the same thing. It's just the way it's used in our life to say, listen, you just have to believe that there's some other possibility out there for you to thrive physically and spiritually. And if you start with that, you start to call it into your life, and you start to take the action. Now, you have to take the action. You can't just sit at home and sit here. I believe. I'm going to call it. That's not going to happen either. You start there, then you follow it with energetic action. And the more massive action you take energetically, the more massive results you're going to call into your life. And isn't that the truth in anything? So like, why don't we look at healing our bodies that way? Because it's the truth when you have a child. It's the truth when you purchase a home. It's the truth when you go after your education, you start your business, whatever. It's like the more focus and energy, you're like, I'm, focusing on this, I'm going to call it into my life. But we just have to get to a place of, why don't we decide that we're worth that?
Yeah.
Like, damn it, I'm worth that. There was no question to me at any time. I'm like, I am worth that. I'm not going to spend my life from 32 to whatever, sick, or even potentially lose my life.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the thing too, is instead of seeing yourself as a victim, I truly believe that any sort of illness, ailment, disease is actually just an indicator to pay attention in a different way. And I think that having that mindset of self-discovery, and almost like, it's so hard to look at this from this perspective for most people, but to look at illness as almost like this adventure to rediscovering yourself, then it's a totally different energy than, the energy of being a victim, the energy of feeling like things just happen to you and you don't have control over any of this.
Everyone breathe in that word. Adventure. I just honor that word that you just said. It's so true. It's an outlook. It's a perspective. I think, it's funny, when I studied psychology in college, I think, I didn't know if you did. I know you've studied some personally if you haven't studied some in your degree, but it was funny because I got a lot of people that were like, what are you going to use that for? Like, it's one of those things that looks at where people are like, that's a useless degree. And I'm like, I use it every day of my life with my clients, in my business, even when I worked in marketing communications as an athlete, as a owner, when I healed my body and had to decide no, this isn't going to be my outcome. I'm going to go and create my outcome that someone's, in the medical community isn't presenting to me. It's the beginning and the end of everything. And so this is why, I'm really passionate about what you're bringing to people, because, it's heartbreaking to me because, we've spent almost a decade now starting our mission. And it was very frustrating to me when I was going through being sick, because I got to the point where I wasn't getting answers in the medical community. It was 2 years. I went for 2 years trying to get answers. I switched over to the natural practitioner community and still was not getting resolution. And we're very authentic and honest about that, because I think people think just because they're going to use natural means, they're doing enough or they're doing the right thing, and they're frustrated. Like, why am I not still getting well? And there are still mistakes in that community. They're not perfect. Okay. So I want you to understand that just doing natural sometimes even is enough, because if you're using natural means, but you're still focusing on symptoms versus getting clear on what the root causes are and giving your body the firepower to restore and heal those, then you're still stuck in the same boat, and you're always going to be. So I went that route next and was trying this, trying that, acupuncturist, naturopath, here's a couple Chinese herbs, here's this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I not getting better?
And did you feel like they just kept telling you more things were wrong with you? I felt like every time I would go to see another doctor, you know, and even from the natural perspective, it was like, add one more thing to the list of all of my problems. And I'm like, this is not helpful. I just feel like I'm so broken. Every time I see a new doctor, there was something new, right?
I think I felt, at first, I felt frustrated because I felt lack of leadership. So that was my initial reaction, is like, I was clear on nothing else. Like, I didn't know what was going on with me at first, but like, I felt frustrated because I perceived lack of leadership. I felt like the people in the natural community I was going to had positive intent, but they still were very like, I didn't really know what was going on with me or what to do. And they just kind of worked in their scope of work, whatever it was that they studied, and tried to help, but they really didn't know. Now, I want to be really clear about this conversation because this is important. That's not to say that you can find a solid practitioner who will still be investigative with you. This is not clear cut work. This is not like, well, I have thyroid disease or autoimmune disease or chronic fatigue, so you get this package. No, this is like investigative work when you're with the right leadership. But my gut was screaming lack of leadership the whole time, because I had been really lucky to work with certain, like I mentioned before, as a coach, I knew what leadership felt like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew the energy of leadership, and we're like, okay, we're going to map a path to change your body from point A to point B for metabolic change as a figure athlete, right? So I knew what leadership felt like in my leadership, and what I was getting didn't feel like leadership.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to go out and create the damn leadership because like, this is what it takes to do this. And so my mind started going, that was what I was saying before. My mind started going, but wait, when we're changing the body as an athlete, we are employing as much area of science as we can, like sleep, nutrition, fitness, or movement. Like, we're employing all these things. So why is that? Why are people not, like, they're still thinking too finite?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not calling out that community. I'm just saying there's a lot of, in the philosophy, that's like, there's limitations in the philosophy that are limiting the outcomes of human body change. Does that make sense? So like, if you want massive change, guess what? Your body is a unit of like 13 systems. So why are we thinking one? If you're going to just employ one, then you're just going to get like little squirrel on a trail, like, like, but if you want like the flood of the results, well, guess what? You got to like address multiple things at once and be like, what can I give to my body all at once, and what can I get out of its way all at once, so it can like move in the direction I'm asking it to go. So there's this, like, I think it was just a blessing that we had that work in athletics that made me think that way.
Yeah. So you knew what you were feeling for.
Dream was like allowing me to see what was missing and what we needed to create to fix it, like to create the solution, that frame that a lot of the natural community still sees it through, in our opinion, professionally and personally, having gone through this successfully, is it's just really limiting. And the third thing that I would suggest to your audience, which this is like crazy to me because it's always the way I've thought, and I know you know some of this too because you work with coaches. But when I always went out to work with a coach as an athlete, or when I wanted to start my online business to help other people, right, with, circumvent their thyroid disease, I go to look for the leader that showcases the outcomes I'm trying to create. I do not choose leaders that cannot show me that they're experiencing the outcomes I'm trying to create. This is just common sense to me. I don't know why people do this. It's a really weird psychology to me, but it's actually more often than not that people just go in the direction of anywhere. Like for me, when I'm engaging with someone as a teammate, that's how I look at it. As like, I'm a teammate, whether I'm taking on a coach, a business coach, an athletic coach, a practitioner, whatever, we're teammates now and getting a co-created result. I'm looking for someone that can showcase success, and that's who I'm going to employ. Like, that's just, and I don't know why, but if you think about it, that's the way we're taught to think about our bodies, right? We just go to a doctor.
Yeah.
But
whoever is on our insurance or whatever. Yeah.
And we don't really question, and we don't expect excellence. we should expect excellence from our leadership. And then if you find that, like you said before, be willing to invest in yourself. Understand that you're worth it. It's a reflection of how you see your life, and your health is of value to you and of worth to you. And I know we've had that conversation as women. You know, I'm not a mom yet, but what like I don't understand is like as moms, we'll do anything. We would give up anything to restore the health of our child. Why do we not look at our own bodies that way? Because your body is a gift from God, universe, whatever you believe. It's a gift. It's a priceless gift. It's the vehicle with which you experience your life, your relationships, your work, your everything. It's your foundation. If you can't put that first or second, well, then that's exactly why you're living the outcomes you are right now.
Yeah, and you have to take that control. You have to take that responsibility for yourself, because I think it's very easy to continue telling ourselves, I have no choice, when really we have choice every single day with every single decision. And it's just a matter of giving yourself permission to prioritize yourself in that way.
One of the best coaches I ever had, one of the best things he said to me when I first started competing was, we were talking about what he wanted me to do in the morning in order to produce my result. And I had to be up at 4. He was like, saying, you're going to have to be up at 3:30. You're going to have to work out first. Cause then I was going to commute up to, we were living in San Jose. I had to commute to San Francisco Bay Area, like for an hour, come back and do a second workout. And my first reaction was, I can't do that. And he didn't even miss a beat. He goes, there is no, I can't. There's only I can or I won't. And I want you to say that again to me. And I was like,
whoa.
Okay, so I won't get up at 3:30. And this is like a huge coach. Like this is now one of the top coaches in the world, in the Canadian athletic team, the NFL, Olympics. And he was like, and you just don't say, you just don't, when you're getting the opportunity to have that person's time and energy, you just don't say that. I was like, okay, so I can get up, I choose or I choose not to. Mm-hmm. And your words are so powerful. I love that you call that out, because we can't receive any healing until we start to take ownership for our personal power to create our outcomes. We are creating our outcomes all the time. Right now, in this conversation, we're creating our outcomes in how we think and how we see it, and what we're choosing to do and where we're choosing to put our money, our time, our energy. We are the creators of those outcomes. And until you own that power and say, I somehow created this disease and called it into my life, then you cannot become the creator who's going to call it out of your life.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's true. It's true. You may not know today. You don't need to know how it came. You just need to say those words. And man, if you could just finish, when we get done with this interview today, and say those words, take a private moment to yourself and say that, pray on that and say, I somehow call this into my life, and I'm going to listen to my body and honor it and figure out how to call it out. Because it's so true. Like I get heartbroken when I get emails where women are like, oh, I see your transformation on your site. That's so awesome. What are the few supplements you took? And and they think it's as simple as me emailing them back. And I'm like, oh my God. And you know where my heart goes, Sheila? It's like, I feel sadness for you, not because you have a disease, but because you are sitting in the most powerful tool that God gave you, this human body. It's incredibly powerful to change. And that tells me you don't even know how powerful it is, because society and the medical system and all these industries, even the fitness industry, let's call it what it is, because it has to an extent a very limited approach that you don't know that your body is powerful to change, to heal, but you're going to have to get more powerful first about what it takes. And it was even me questioning a lot of things in my life. Like, I love how you said, what was the word before that you used that called out personal ownership and not
permission.
Yes. It's seeing it as an adventure,
Oh yeah. Self-discovery. Yes. It's so true. And that's the silver lining, really, is seeing it like what you just said, like giving yourself permission to not just try to slap a Band-Aid on it, but to get to the root. And I think that's like the perfect place for us to wrap it up with a bow, because really when we give ourselves that time to really tune in and go through some of the steps that you mentioned today, it's like that really opens us up to solutions, not just trying to solve a problem with a Band-Aid. And so,
yeah, it's not that simple. And really, would it ever be?
yeah,
Like having disease-free health is an immense, priceless gift. If
yes,
you look around, I don't even think 1% of people are living without any health problems at all. And when I mean health problems, I mean like no allergies, no nothing, like no imbalances in your body. And to do that, and living in a place of peace and calm in your body versus chaos, because
yes,
that's really what it is. And that's greatness. So why would we think that it's, as simple as, like you said, like a Band-Aid or just a magic pill, or it's something we need to be willing as people to work for
yeah,
and to discover and to create in our lives. But I can honestly say, when you choose that and you put it first in your life for a while, and you open the space in your money, time, and energy to put it first in your life and create that, it changes everything. It just changes everything. It's how you experience yourself, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your spouse or your loved one, your friends, your family, your job, everything. It changes everything in a priceless way that is immeasurable. I'm sure you agree. I could just
yes. No, this is so good. And I want to give people a way to take this further with you if they would like to and find more about, out about what you guys are doing. And I know you have a special free gift for them. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we have our E3 Energy Vault Guide, which has kind of like a complimentary cookbook, but it's basically about how you can take some steps to start to restore your thyroid and your metabolism related to resetting your metabolism. So if you're in any kind of fatigue disorder, how you kind of take our E3 Energy Vault system and start to self-reflect and individualize your approach by looking at the 3 levels of energy. So your energy in, your energy out, your energy environment, and what each of those levels includes that we suggest you start to become more aware of. So you're not just dealing with very limited, just food and movement, but you're really looking at all the ways your body perceives stress and energy in each one of these levels so that you can start to make some changes in a positive direction. And then we have some starter tips in there, and then some complimentary recipes that Damien's created, which are awesome. And it kind of goes through our story and just how much has changed for us, and shows some of our transformations. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And I know he's an amazing cook. I've seen your pictures on Facebook and online. So those have to be good recipes.
Yeah, I cannot wait. We're going to start doing some recipe videos very shortly now that we just moved into our new kitchen. I cannot wait, because we're going to do some food education stuff. Because it's how that is too. I think people tend to focus on the limitation. They're like, oh, actually what you have to focus is on what you're getting.
Yes.
And there is this period of, how do I experience? It's not limiting. I will admit I'm very spoiled in that sense. Damien's really creative with food. He can take whole foods. You have to find ways to interact with food and create with them that's sustainable and actually brings you joy. And but once you do that, it's actually not. It's not hard. I think people think it's hard. It's really not hard. It's very, you love it. We love what we eat. You know what I mean? Look for it. I'm like, oh my God, I get, when I have to travel for work, I'm like, I can't wait to get back to our kitchen.
Yeah. Self-discovery in the form of recipes and new things in the kitchen as well is such a great mindset to have about it. So thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate your time. And I know that everyone is going to get so much out of this interview. So thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, I forgot to give him the link.
Oh, that's okay. We'll have it below, linked up below.
Oh my God, we can talk forever.
Oh, we could. All right, girl. Take care, and I will see everyone else in the next interview.